Hi, and welcome to my week 3 assignment, the command line calculator. This is probably more complicated than it needs to be, but I really didn't like the idea of errors being able to appear and break in the program, so I spent extra time trying to figure out how to work around user input error. So the first thing we have is the main function. This is where we're going to call the subtasks to. Defining the functions of adding two numbers, subtracting two numbers, multiplying, dividing, and getting the absolute value of one number. And then when the user quits out of the program, we want to print the stats, which would be how many times they called each function or used each function. So right away I need to keep track of those, so I have the counter variables for each function. These are within the main function, so that they are technically local variables. So within main is where I'm going to add them each time this function is called. For instance, with the add function is called right there, and then it's going to add 1 to the counter that starts at 0, and then I need to call those as arguments to the print stats function when I'm going to print those, because those are, like I said, a local variable up here and would not be able to be accessed down here without passing those arguments. So my whole program runs on a while loop while the user input is not equal to quit. So I initialize the variable user input as just a nothing in order to enter this loop, and then as soon as this is checked out and good, we get the user input. The first thing that prints is welcome to iCalculator. This is outside of the loop so that it doesn't continue to print. And you can see as I ran the program, it starts welcome to iCalculator and then has the user prompt, which is what is printed here for the user input. Now this input is going to be a string of one line, so we want to make sure that we can convert numbers in this string to floats. So when I press return and get that value, so we're adding the numbers 2 and 1, we get 3. So tokens will be the name of this list. We're going to split this line into a list, and then I created a variable named list length to find out how many pieces of data are in that list, so that I can check that against a while loop to make sure that I'm able to initialize the proper x and y variables. So as soon as I have this, I know this is 3. Since there are 3 parts, even though the actual list will be stored as token 0, 1, 2, token 0 being add, tokens 1 being the first number, and tokens 2 being the second number. So while the list is equal to 3, I know that the user has input 3 different types. Then I know that I can go ahead and assign x and y to the second and third numbers. And I have a while loop for each of the list values, just so that I can break out of the loop and get back to the user input so that I can get proper variables to be called on. So for instance, while list is equal to 3, if that first word is add or sub or mul or div, then it's going to call the function. But if the user messes up and they put, instead of div, they put dic 2.1, then that's going to come up with an error, and I want to be able to come back to get proper input. So I have an if elif else within my while loop here, and the else means that the first token is not any of the proper words, So I'm going to print error, enter new values, assign user input back to outside of the loop right here, so that I can re-enter this loop and get the user input and re-split the tokens and find the list length. So if I do dic21, get error new values, and now I get a new user prompt. So if I put add 3, 4, I'm going to get 7, where if I didn't have this set up, this would be pulling incorrect values for this, and this might not work. So while the list is equal to 3, then we're going to do all this, so we can call sub 82, which will get, oops, 82, which will get a 6. And then you actually saw me type in 82 as 1. So within the list length equal to 2, that means we are doing an absolute value. So sub 82 is going to be an error. So I have an if else within this while loop, where if I press enter, I'm going to get error, enter new values, and it's going to break out of this loop and bring me right back up into here. It's going to assign user input back to here and enter the loop all new again. With abs, the list length will be 2, so abs is the first, and 3 would be the second. So we're going to assign x to tokens 1 as a float, which is that first number. The reason that we have to do this is because if the list is equal to 3, or if we try to add a y value to this, we're going to get an error because this list is only this has 2 parts to it, and there is no y to add, which is why I need to separate this from this. So if I enter, get the absolute value of 3 is 3, so if we did a negative number, we would get the positive return, which is correct. And then with the list length equal to 1, that's when we would get the quit prompt from the user, which then would call the print stats function and then break out of the program. But I can't just leave this as 1, like if list length equal to 1, then we print stats, because they might have a user error where they just typed sub. So we need to error enter new values, which is this else. We break out of this and again assign the user input back up to here, so we enter from the beginning and just start the whole process over again to make sure that all the calculations are correct. So once these are all called division, we can do 4, 2 and get 2, and we have this if clause in here. If the second number, so number 2, these are being called in, where's sub? So xy, when I'm calling this, I am passing this argument of xy, which are assigned here, and then they're being called into the sub or the div function. And if number 2, which is the y value, is equal to 0, we want to print error division by 0, return the number 0, which returns a 0 and gets us back. So if I type quit, I'm going to obviously make this not true, and the list will equal 1. We're going to print stats because it's going to say quit. And if we count them here, we have 1 add, 2 sub, 2 abs, 2 divs, and we'll throw a multi in there. And then quit, and then we're going to print all those functions. So we have 2 add, 1 sub, 1 mul, 2 division, 2 absolute values, and then it breaks out of the loop, and the quit is the stored value of user input. So then when it comes back up, this will not break into this loop, and we can break out of the program.